Hey, welcome to Beat Everyone. I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com. So it's a bye week, and after 3 weeks, you can exhale a little bit. Alabama seems to have responded in the ways that should reassure Crimson Tide fans that they're the team that they thought they were heading into the 2025 season. But as soon as they're back, it gets real for Bama with Georgia and the rest of the very competitive and hungry SEC on the horizon. Today, we welcome a reporter who has it all covered with Alabama football from Yay, Alabama, from Cover Crimson, E.G. McWhorter. Welcome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben. I'm excited to be here.
So, I want to get the temperature of not just the fan base, but of Alabama, something that you're well accustomed to. After Florida State, everybody went into panic mode. Let's be honest, fans freaked out. They thought one thing about this team heading into the season and saw something totally different in that first game. Their playoff hopes were dashed, right? Some were even ready to move on to the next chapter. But, one thing that we seem to know about Kalen DeBoer is he's a pretty calm and collected guy. He doesn't appear to panic. And he chose this let's not waste a failure approach and mentality following the Florida State game. How would you say he has responded internally, and how has he gotten the players to follow that lead?
Yeah, I think one thing is Coach DeBoer has received a lot of criticism. And part of that is when you follow, arguably the best head coach to ever coach, Nick Saban, you're going to get that comparison. You're going to have everyone comparing him to what Nick Saban was for Alabama. Some of it is unfair, some of it is fair, right? And so I think one thing that has stuck out to me about Coach DeBoer since his introductory press conference until now is that, like you said, Ben, his demeanor has not changed. He is who he is, and he's going to lead this team in the way that he feels is best along with the staff. And that was something that I heard not only from players, but also different staff members about how they were so content and happy with how Coach DeBoer led that charge and that shift. And I think that what was so concerning about that loss was the effort issues that we saw on tape. And one of those guys was Bray Hubbard. And based off of his performance against Wisconsin, he completely has tuned things up. He was not going to let that game define him, but that starts at the top. That mentality, that killer mentality of, hey, like we have a chip on our shoulder. We need to respond to this. And I think that is what you can't really plan on is when you get punched in the mouth, how are you going to get back up? And Alabama, in my opinion, based off what I've seen inside the facility along with outside, they've responded well.
Yeah, I mean, Bray Hubbard is a great example. Somebody who said out loud in front of cameras, I'm
Mhm.
going to be better. And then he backed that up in the
Yeah.
Wisconsin game. He was great, SEC player of Defensive Player of the Week. Back to the fans, because they're fickle, right? We know this. And it's something that everybody knows about Alabama fans and sports fans, really. I mean, do you think that these blowout wins over La Monroe and Wisconsin have calmed the waters a little bit, or do you think that there's still some anxiety, especially during a bye week before the biggest game of the year? Like, what's the temperature among the people who are most obsessed with Alabama football?
So listen, I'm a Georgia Southern grad. All right. So I have always heard about Alabama fans. I grew up in Atlanta, and Alabama fans have always been this kind of like mystical entity, if you will. So when I had the opportunity to start covering Alabama, that was the first thing I noticed was how rabid this fan base is, and for good reason. Because unlike some other schools, you have the trophy case to back it up. And I think that something that Alabama fans are struggling with right now is kind of living in the past a little bit. You're not having PTSD, but you're having this kind of weird, you have to come to terms that not only is your program changing, but across the board programs are changing. And the parity in the SEC is at an all time. Your lesser teams, the Vandy's, the Mississippi States, those teams are rising to the occasion. And at the top, it's not as dominant, which results for us some really good college football each Saturday. But with that being said, I don't think that after how this team opened against FSU and Tallahassee, and I was there, Ben, you can't give them a ULM and a Wisconsin and expect them to say it's good now. And dare I say, there are still going to be fans, even if Alabama, heads to Athens and they win by 20, you're still going to have fans that are going to point to week one and say, but wait, this is where we're starting. We still have this. I'm not fully convinced because with this fan base, a playoff berth is the expectation.
Let me follow up with that because you said you were there. You were in Tallahassee to see that live. So, in sticking with the fans in particular, so cameras caught unhappy fans, let's say,
Yeah,
right?
we'll
Uh,
say
yeah,
that.
one on national TV, some of our own cameras as
Mhm.
fans were leaving the field. I'm sure you saw it up close and personal. Like, what was that vibe like? I guess were they just stunned? Like, I wasn't there. All I saw was what I saw on camera. But what did you see with your own eyes?
Well, it was such a it was such an environment, and I think that I've been to Tiger Stadium, I was there last year, and I've been to Athens, I've been to, the Rose Bowl, all of these incredible atmospheres, and there was something different about that FSU game. And I think the FSU fans really remembered 2 years ago when they did not make the college football playoffs because of Alabama. And you can say they lost to a 2-10 team last season. That is a team of old. Where we're at right now week 4 with a bye, the argument is maybe that team wasn't so bad, and maybe that looks better for Bama. But back to the fans, I think that there was so much excitement going into this season because of what we heard and what we saw with our own eyes. And I'm one of them, right? I was there during summer. I was there during fall, seeing these practice windows and feeling this intensity from this team. And it seemed like, they get to the game, and all of these things that we'd heard and seen go out the window. And it was confusing. I think shocked, yes, but it was more frustrating because it felt very similar to what we saw Alabama produce against Michigan to start the year off. And that was, abysmal. And so I think that fans, there was a frustration. And when I was watching after, FSU storms the field, it's crazy. And I actually got caught because they opened up the garages so to let everyone exit field level, right? And so I'm trying to get all the way around to post game. Long story short, I got caught, and so I'm waiting for all of the Alabama personnel to leave to get back on the buses and having to stand there. I can't go anywhere. I've done post game with Cover Crimson and watch everyone from Greg Byrne to Ryan Williams exit. It was such a defeat, and it became really clear to me it is all about the response from this. It's all about the bounce back, because this is a low that you guys, even the disappointing and painful losses of last season, this feels different.
Speaking of feeling different, that can't be your first rodeo in the sense of being on the field during a field rush, right? What has been the most intense field rush where you've covered Alabama getting beat on the road? Because as everybody says, it's everybody's Super Bowl when they play Alabama,
Mhm.
and that's a stereotype. But when they start rushing the field after they beat them, that becomes apparent that that's true. But what can you remember about field rushes and having to just like get out of there in one
Yeah.
piece?
You just have to take cover, and so I actually have a story, and it was actually pertaining to Auburn. So I was there when, they beat Texas A&M last season. That was, like, their Super Bowl. Oh my gosh, you would have thought they were going to the national championship. And my instinct was this, and if you ever find yourself in a field rush, this is a little helpful hint for those watching, find the coach that just lost. And I'll tell you why. Because he's gonna have security around him. And so I actually grabbed Mike Elko's elbow and I was like, listen, no matter what, I know that I'm protected because he's got security around him. I'm going to act like I belong right here. And I followed him cleanly off the field. The only field storm I've been a part of with Alabama was FSU because I did not travel to Vandy or OU. And so FSU was pretty intense. As a sideline reporter with ESPN Plus, I've been a part of two, and that's a crazy, environment trying to find the coach or player you need. But the helpful hint is always find the coach that lost because he's going to have security and no one's going to want to be around him.
Yeah, it's a great tip, to say the least. But I mean, like in the Nick Saban days when he had those state troopers around him, I've seen some fans be on the wrong end of those
Yeah.
elbows before.
Yes.
So
You have to,
head on
you
a
have to actually
swivel.
belong, Ben. You have to like kind of blend in a little bit. It helps
All
if you're
right,
not wearing the other team's colors too.
it's good to know. I don't think I'd have as much success as you did with Coach Elko. So the bye week comes at a really good time to prepare
Mhm.
for Kirby Smart, who has exactly one win against Alabama since he left the program to become head coach at Georgia in 2016, and he obviously won the national championship in Indianapolis in 2021. Otherwise, Alabama has owned Georgia. I mean, even
Mhm.
Kalen DeBoer got in on the fun last year, but that Georgia is obviously itching for this one. They've got them at home. It's a night game between the Hedges and Athens. What do you think Alabama is up against a couple of Saturdays from now?
Yeah, I think you said it best. Alabama has kind of dominated this matchup. They've dominated Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I saw a great tweet about how Alabama owns a few stadiums, and one of them is Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta against Georgia. This Kirby Smart team is interesting because it's not necessarily the Georgia of old, right? Where it's extremely dominant and you kind of know that you have these guaranteed playmakers, you have a guaranteed quarterback and things like that. Not saying that Carson Beck was ever a guarantee for the Dogs, but it's a unique roster. And I think that what Georgia does so well is whatever we see first half, and this is a praise of Kirby Smart, his halftime adjustments are incredible. They're arguably some of the best. And so I think with Georgia, you have a very patient team and you have a very moldable roster. And that's what Kirby Smart wants because he wants to see, okay, you know, Alabama has not had to put a lot on tape yet. Georgia has against Tennessee, and that's a good thing. And me, I was in the camp. I'm not sure about you, Ben, but how Georgia beat Tennessee on Saturday, to me, that is the best case scenario if you're an Alabama fan, because you don't want a Georgia that's lost to Tennessee in that fashion. You want a Georgia that might be a little fatigued, that might be a little tired, that also had to put out everything that they've got on tape to beat Tennessee in Knoxville. And so this is going to be a dogfight. I'm excited. I think that we're getting a great rematch from last season. And for Alabama, it's important that you really have to have a balanced offensive attack because you really need that run game to get going. So you can find yourself if you have a, early lead or you have a lead at all that's pretty healthy, you want to be able to lean on that and not let, the pass game be exposed because you're having to rely on Ty Simpson, the receivers, to keep things going.
It's a great point. I mean, everybody's watching Alabama to improve the run game. They certainly don't want Ty Simpson to be the leading rusher in any more games this year,
Right.
like he was against Wisconsin, when it obviously didn't really matter, but certainly a question mark, big mystery right now, in hopes that Jam Miller can get healthy enough to play potentially in the Georgia game or beyond that. So this is obviously a monster moment for Kalen DeBoer and this team. They obviously have one loss already. Many people kind of crossed this Georgia game off the list before the season even started as a game that Alabama could afford to lose, right?
Right.
Like it would look fine on a playoff resume, but with the Florida State loss, the margin of error has only gotten smaller. Like there isn't even a margin of error at this point. A big X factor here is how Alabama plays on the road under
Mhm.
Kalen DeBoer, at least so
Yeah.
far. So how aware do you think Coach DeBoer is of the stakes here, and what indication is there right now that Alabama might start a little faster on the road when they need it most?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question because when you look at the record, Kalen DeBoer's this Alabama team, they haven't performed well. And it's to me, it's been different variations. But I think the Tennessee game last year, OU and Vandy are also different for different reasons. But the common thread is you're not performing well on the road. So at home, you're 9-0. I mean, and you wear that black hoodie too. You add that to the mix, and it's like, okay, we're really doing something here. But I think he's well aware of what this game means because you'd be hard pressed not to at this point. I think that he knows that, in this league, in the SEC, you have to win on the road. And that is the next step in his, I feel like, development as a head coach and staff. I think something that we don't talk enough about is we always talk about how like players are developing, but also the staff is developing too. And they have to improve and they're needing to evolve and things like that. And so after FSU, you saw what happened. And I wish I had more answers as to the why behind it, as to why they start kind of flat on the road, as to why the intensity seems to be down. But based off of what I've seen and heard and felt in these last 2 weeks, and listen, I'll be the first one to say I'll come back on with you in a couple weeks and say, listen, I was wrong. It did not go as planned. But I feel like the energy and the temperature in that facility has just gone up in a good way, not in a non-sustainable way, too. It's not like, they're peaking, but I think there's a ferociousness and a focused intensity on the moment and not looking past the moment. And that's what you have to have.
Yeah, saw fiery DeBoer on the
Yeah.
sideline during Wisconsin. That was interesting. I think that's something fans really like to see.
Yes.
We at AL.com don't pay attention to what the coach is wearing. Okay, like we've never talked. No, we've talked about that quite a bit on the site and on this podcast. Do you think there's something to the hoodie thing? Do you
I
do you,
think
do you
there
buy
is.
that? I mean, record speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Record speaks for itself. I think that Kalen DeBoer going back to Washington, he likes black, and it bodes well for him. So I'm in the camp of if it's working, let's not fix it. And Alabama fans, if you guys want to adopt the black dry fit hoodie, I think we all should. I think it's a good look, and I do think that we will see much more of this black hoodie going forward.
Breathable too, right?
Breathable,
Especially during
yeah,
those August and
exactly.
September games in Bryant Denny Stadium. So yeah, pragmatic coach. So What about the rest of the schedule? It doesn't get much easier for Alabama after they play arguably the strongest program, not just in the SEC, but in the country. In Georgia, they get Vanderbilt at home. They just crushed South Carolina and
Yeah.
Columbia. They go to Missouri. They get a high-powered and now very desperate Tennessee squad to stay in the mix. They go on
Mhm.
the road to play South Carolina before they get another bye, and then they get to play LSU and Oklahoma. Not to mention another Iron Bowl in Jordan Hare looming at the end of the year. So again, I mentioned the margin of error. Like, how do you see Alabama navigating what's in front of them after what you've seen in 3 games?
Yeah, it's tough. There's no way to put it. You're going to really tough environments, but you also have, LSU at home, you have Tennessee at home, dare I say you have Vandy at home this year, which is just crazy that we're saying that, but it's one of those things where week 1 becomes so much more significant. And there may be a time this season where we're done talking about week 1 in FSU. I don't think we're there yet. That's still a sore subject, and I think that what Alabama fans don't want is they don't want that to be what keeps them from reaching the playoffs. We don't know how good FSU is in its entirety yet. But with that being said, the margin of error is so slim. And prior to Saturday, I actually had South Carolina as one of the games that I was most nervous about. And I'm curious to see how they respond after, the Vanderbilt loss. But I think that that's something that has shifted a little bit for me. But you still have these teams that are so just intrinsically good in this league. And right now, I think 7 of those are ranked as we sit here. What's the date today? Set the 17th. And so it's like when you look at that, I mean, it's crazy. I like that you get Tennessee at home. I like that you have LSU at home, but when we look back to last year, LSU, that was such a blowout. It was such a, where has this been all season long? Then you wrap up with the Iron Bowl in Jordan Hare, and Kalen DeBoer has not traveled down there. And I think that that's going to be such an intense storyline because people are going to want to make sure that he knows that that place is just a little a little kooky, a little spooky, if you will. So it's tough. And I think that, week 1 just it's painful. And the more that you look at the schedule, you quite literally have to go 1-0 each week.
Kooky is kind,
Yeah,
EG.
it is.
Yeah, I would say so. But I mean, look, to be fair too, you mentioned the LSU game. It was a road game. They looked
Yeah.
great. Wisconsin, road game last year. They looked
Right.
great. So it's in this team. It's
Yeah.
in a Kalen DeBoer team to do that. It's just which one will you get? But I think that's a great point about Florida State, about the fact that we're not done talking about it for the foreseeable future, because if they come out flat against Georgia, then it becomes, oh, well, they are that team from
Yeah.
week one.
Hmm.
So it's interesting.
Exactly.
What about Ty Simpson? Like, I think anyone who's like really paying attention knew that he wasn't the problem against Florida State, but he was almost written off after just one game by some people. He comes storming back. He's one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the country the last 2 weeks. We
Hmm.
all know who Alabama played in those 2 games. Everybody is aware, but you recently spoke to Nick Sheridan about the quarterback room.
Yeah.
You're plugged in. What kind of
Mhm.
competitor does Alabama have in Ty Simpson?
Yeah, I think the competition in that room we can't overstate. And arguably, when you look at Austin Mack, Ty Simpson, and Keelan Russell, there's such deep talent there, and there's a competitiveness that's only making Ty better right now. And you're right, people really wrote Ty off after game 1, and I don't think that he was the entirety of the problem in that game. And it's funny that you mentioned like the competition. People are kind of still kind of writing him off. Like, well, of course he should perform that way. Well, then why are we not seeing other quarterbacks in college football performing at such a high clip in these first few games? We're not. We're not seeing guys excel in completion rate like Ty Simpson is right now. And also his decision making, his composure, and his confidence in the pocket, it's super fun to watch right now because he's threading these passes. I mean, I'm in the end zone and I'm getting kind of, a field level view of these throws, and they're incredible. You also have the receivers, of course, that are catching those. Now, his numbers should be even better, but Lotsier Brooks and Ryan Williams both had a drop in the fourth quarter of Saturday's game. And so I think that Ty has really responded well to hard coaching. And that was something that he actually asked from Coach Sheridan, Coach Grubb, Coach DeBoer. He wanted to be coached harder. And so they did. And Coach Grubb said, he was like, I'm not going to make that mistake of not making sure that he's ready for the moment. Like he felt like he kind of was against FSU. And so, the quarterback room, it's it's a great group of guys and they're very supportive of each other. But Nick Sheridan told me, he said, I don't want it to get like, don't get it twisted. The level of competitiveness in this room even trumps that. But they owe it to the team to be the best quarterback room that they could be.
Yeah, how is everyone on the team responding to adversity? You mentioned the wide receivers. You
Mhm.
mentioned Ryan Williams by name. He was obviously a huge story heading into
Yeah.
the Wisconsin game, coming back from the concussion, also coming back from what many people considered a subpar day for him in
Mhm.
Tallahassee before he got hurt. He blew up, and nobody had a better view of that than you did, right? You shared a pretty incredible video of his latest, just his
Yeah.
latest acrobatic touchdown catch and run. What was that like? Like literally being in front of, like, front and center, literally, for that moment when we saw the return of that Ryan Williams as he appeared to sprint right towards your camera.
Yeah, it's the best part of my job, and I think that I'm having to learn tendencies of this new team, whereas last season, with Jalen, I kinda knew, okay, like, this is where I need to be if he's gonna stop, and you start to get to know these players as well. And so, I was so frustrated then because the 75-yard touchdown, I was on the other side of the end zone, and normally I'm in that corner, and I was like, "Dang it, like, I'm having to learn, like, all right, it's fine." And I spoke to the camera guy next to me, I was like, "Hopefully something good happens, like, on this next drive." And so you can actually see in the video, he fakes me out too. Like I think he's going out of bounds. And it was funny because I see him sort of coming to the end zone and I'm like looking at him and I'm like nodding my head. I'm like, yes, like come on, come on, come on. I'm like, I'm obviously not supposed to cheer or anything like that. And I didn't know if like we'd actually made eye contact. And then obviously when he stopped in front of my camera, it does the point. I mean, it's one of those things that like it's so much fun to like have that moment. But as you said, kind of that return and see that fire back under him. It's great. And what I said last week, and I want to say it on here too. When it comes to what's being said on social media, when it comes to what is being said on X, on Instagram, if you have the trust in your teammates, it does not matter what people are saying on social media. And Ryan Williams never lost the trust in his teammates. And I want to make that pretty clear that when I was able to talk to Isaiah Horton a couple weeks ago, that wide receiver room, and it starts with Coach DeMarcus Shepard, the culture in that room is great. And they are competitors, just like that quarterback room. But the trust that those guys have in each other, Jeremy Bernard and his leadership role there, like you can't overstate it. And I think that people unfairly jumped on Ryan after week one. And to me, it was like we don't have enough data points to support this. And you go back to last season, they say, well, like, Georgia was his last like really big game, and Mercer was the last time he had a touchdown, things like that. You do have to account for he's still developing and learning. And just as much as you want him to have that jump in his sophomore year, he does too. And I think Saturday was a great way to get him back in that rhythm. The connection between him and Ty was great. And, I think it was Ty that said, like, he's one of my best friends. So that connection point there is really solid. And I'm excited to see how they build on that. And from my perspective, there's no better, receiver group that you want responding to the bright lights that's going to be in Athens next week.
Yeah, and if they've got that Ryan Williams back, along with Jeremy Bernard, who's been
Yeah.
unbelievable, Isaiah Horton, who appears to be coming into his own now, and just depth at that position, then they're going to be as dangerous as everybody
Yeah.
thought they would be. And it's hard to get mad at a guy for dropping a touchdown after he's had 5 catches for 165 yards and 2 touchdowns. So
Yeah.
great to see Ryan Williams back. A couple more for you here, EG. I'm curious, how do you spend the bye week? Because it's weird to have one so early in the season. Some reporters, they go on vacation, they do some of them do like deep dives into features and data for big stories down the road. Others just kind of take a breath and watch some college football that isn't Alabama. What's your approach to the bye week?
Yeah, so normally, because I recently, I covered both Alabama and Auburn, so I was right in the middle of the Iron Bowl matchup. And so typically, my bye weeks did not match up. So very rarely would I have a weekend where I either wasn't traveling with one of the other teams or, it just wasn't matching up. And so I'm actually going back to Atlanta. I'm very excited. I'll be down in Tuscaloosa today and tomorrow doing some coaches interviews and then player interviews. And I'm kind of take a breath. Like I'm excited. It's going to be weird because it is so early. I'm moving out of my apartment here soon, so I have to take some boxes back and things like that. So it won't be the most relaxing bye week, but I also love getting to just watch an entire day of college football. I mean,
Wait,
it's
so you say you're a Georgia Southern grad. Georgia
yeah,
Southern, that's the Tin Horn team, right?
yes,
Oh my
yes.
gosh. How's that feel to be part of that legacy?
That is our best-selling T-shirt. Still to this day, that quote is everywhere, it seems, in Statesboro. Yes, I love Georgia Southern. I am the biggest proponent of that place in the world, and we have a shared connection to Alabama because of it, because of that great quote from Nick Saban. The "You don't remember Georgia Southern, do you?" So we still love that T-shirt. You can go buy that T-shirt still, and we love it.
Could not stop him. What was it?
Could not
40,
stop them.
45 to 21. Alabama had no answers for him. That's great. Last thing for you. Those who follow you, they know your heart rate. They know the calories you burn. They know the number of steps that you take on a game day. And for anybody who's covered a game, right, in Alabama or anywhere, especially when you're moving up and down the sideline, you're moving around the perimeter of a 100-yard football field, it does take a physical toll. I
It is.
wonder though, how would you describe the experience of covering an Alabama football game from a health standpoint?
Yeah, so I wear this thing right here. It's called a Whoop, and it is a great invention. It kind of stresses you out more because you can see how stressed you are. I don't know if people resonate with that, but the fact that I know how stressed I'm getting in the moment makes me want to check it, which makes me think, why am I so stressed out right now? I need to calm down. It tracks everything, your sleep, like it's really interesting. And so I decided this season I'm going to track my metrics for a game because I know the biggest question is I don't want to know Ryan Williams stats. I want to know EG stats. So I had to give an answer. But no, it's been really cool. And so one thing, I was a sideline reporter for Georgia Southern for many seasons, covering, every sport under the sun. And each one comes with its own set of stressors. But there's really nothing like football because you're just taking laps around that field. And so in my role now, I'm a little more stationary in the end zones, but it is unlike anything because your days start so early or so late, right? So, like for a late kick, I'm getting down there by 4, I would say, and then I'm not getting back until 2 a.m. When it's an early kick, I'm getting down there by 8 and I'm getting back by, 4 or 5. And so the physical toll it takes, especially in these hot games, Ben, it was so hot down there this past weekend. It's really interesting to see. And there's nothing like covering Alabama. Like there's no substitute for it. It's been the coolest part of my sports journey so far is getting to work so closely with the program itself now. And my role with the Alabama is our team correspondent and then with Cover Crimson as well. And so there's no substitute for the excitement and just the level of intensity and standard that still exists. I think I get asked that question a lot. I know we're talking about my health, but is the standard lost? Is everything different inside that facility? And it's not. I think that the carryover from Coach Saban, it exists and it's still there. And this coaching staff is doing a really good job of making sure that doesn't go anywhere. And I think that's what a lot of people are wondering. And I can tell you, being inside of that facility, it's definitely up to par.
Yeah, I've been one of those guys with like a monopod and one of those huge lenses on a September Saturday afternoon, and you're not measuring steps, you're measuring gallons of sweat that you pour out there on the Bryant-Denny field. So hydrate, wear
Yes.
sunscreen, and maybe bring a towel or something because
Yeah,
it
please.
can get ugly. She's E.G. McWhorter, a reporter who covers Alabama football and all sports. You can find her at Yay Alabama, Cover Crimson. Follow her at MEG_sports. EG, thank you so much. This has been a
Yeah.
thrill.
Yeah, thank you so much. Listen, I love talking about Alabama. I'm always around, and thank you for having me on.
Of course, you can find Beat Everyone on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Matt Scalisi produces the show for us. I'm Ben Flanagan. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.